Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, Outlaws of Thunder Junction main set spoiler season is done. I'm trying to make sure I get this right. But we saw the big score spoiler season now, which already had some of it already come out, but now we've got more of it coming out, which is like part of Thunder Junction, but not part of Thunder Junction because they messed up Aftermath last year and no one liked it. So then they're like, let's just shove it all into one set, but we still have like the separate symbols and they're not actually part of the set, but they are part of the set. Yeah, let's jump into it. So, it's all kind of confusing again. I do this for a living, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening sometimes. Bristlebud Farmer, though, seems like an interesting card. A 5/5 plant druid with trample for, you guessed it, 4 mana because green. But also, on top of that, when it enters the battlefield, you make 2 food tokens, and whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a food. If you do, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among them into your hand. So, if you have a food deck, consider this one. If you've got like a Power Matters deck like Goreclaw, I don't know why I tripped on Goreclaw, but yeah, this is a 2-mana 5/5 trampler that can, at the very least, again, if you have no other food interaction in the deck, get you potentially 3 or 2 cards in your hand, I should say. I almost said 3. But yeah, mill 3 twice, getting 2 permanents in your hand. Most likely you'll be able to hit a permanent on each of those if you've got a Goreclaw deck, because you mostly have probably, well, lands and creatures. Yeah. But yeah, food, Power Matters type strategies as well. Those are the 2 that you probably want to consider this. Maybe a little bit of mill as well, but again, it is based on this actually attacking and then sacrificing foods. Keep that in mind. Moving on, Collector's Cage, an artifact for 1 and a white. Hideaway 5. So when this enters battlefield, top 5 cards your library, exile 1 face down, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Wizards, why did that need to change? Wizards, it used to be just whatever order you want. Why did that need to change? Weird. Okay, anyways. Pay 1. It's going to be because it's like, it takes less time. Okay, don't care. Pay 1, tap, put a counter on target creature control. Then if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may play the exile card without paying its mana cost. I mean, this is very easy for you to get that value out of that, because if you play in any kind of a +1 counter deck, which the white is very good at, I mean, Selesnya kind of like types of decks really lean heavily into that, many do. So being able to go heavily into that, you probably can just actually get that hideaway off the top 5 right away. You play this, you pay 1, you tap, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you have 3 creatures with different powers, you know, maybe based on +1 counters, or just, because that can obviously be how you adjust it, or just having a decent amount of creatures in play, you'll probably even meet that right away. Then just, yeah, get the card for free. So this makes like 3 mana cast a spell at the top of your top 5 for free, essentially, which is decent. I mean, pretty good. But also, I mean, if you got some top deck manipulation, ways to get cards on top, that's obviously very nice. Like a, like Sylvan Tutor. Is that the one? Worldly Tutor. Those essentially get a creature on top, or, you know, any of those other kind of tutors that can get a creature, or, you know, whatever other kind of permanent on top you cast for free. Yeah, and a +1 counter strategy. Nice. Additional free value, no, additional value each turn, but still you have to pay for it. Interesting. Next up, Esoteric Duplicator, an artifact clue for 3 mana. Whenever you sacrifice it or another artifact, you may pay 2. If you do it at the beginning of the next end step, create tokens, copy that artifact, pay 2, sacrifice it, draw a card. Interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I guess overall, if you literally just want to keep utilizing this, you could pay 2, sacrifice it, and then pay another 2 to actually just keep drawing cards. So it's like 4 mana card draw. Yeah, technically, but obviously the bigger impact here is if you have artifacts you actually want to sacrifice and you get value out of sacrificing, just being able to pay 2 to make a token copy of them can be great. Keep in mind, by making a token copy, that can actually work really well with like populate type effects too. So if you have like artifact creatures maybe that you want to sacrifice, say like, oh, I don't know, Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum, you can keep getting that value again and again and again and again from, you know, sacrificing it with, you know, something else. Obviously you needed something else to sacrifice. It doesn't have a self-sacrifice thing. And also, yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't say non-token, obviously, so like if you are sacrificing this again, you keep going. If you sacrifice a single clue, it turns into a perpetual clue as well, but I guess this is already there anyways. Interesting. Very interesting card. I'm sure there's some pretty broken things you can do with this. Again, it does come back at the end step night right away, so that does kind of alleviate certain fears that there might be like some weird combos around this, but yeah, there's some very interesting value to be had out of this for sure. Next up, Gamble of Greed. There's one type of deck that wants this, and it really wants it. And jam it for 3 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, gain 6 life, and create 3/2/1 black bat creature tokens with flying. So all good things, right? 4 mana, draw 3. That's already, Oh gosh, Ancient Craving, essentially, basically, but on enchantment. Also gain 6 life. Nice, that's great. And then make 3 2/1 bats. Great. Lots of value to be had for just 4 mana, right? Okay, let's just stop that, move on. Oh wait, no, there's a downside. Beginning of your end step, discard a card, lose life, and sacrifice a creature. Okay, so you are going down in value at the end of each turn, essentially. And then also, when this leaves the battlefield, discard 3 cards, lose 6 life, sacrifice 3 creatures. So basically, the exact opposite of what you did to start. Again, you are literally doing the exact opposite, discarding 3, losing that 6 life that you already gained, and then losing 3 creatures. It doesn't have to be those 3 bats. That being said, I mean, what you're going to be using this for isn't probably just like in every kind of typical deck, because this is, yeah, a burst of value, but then a massive downside throughout the game if this stays in play, or just right away if you lose this. So actually, you're going to be utilizing this in like more of a bad gifts strategy. Now, unfortunately, Zedru players out there, you cannot utilize this because it's outside your color identity. That being said, if you've got like a 5-color bad gift stack, which is, when I say bad gifts, I mean like the types of cards that you maybe like to play, then you give an opponent, and you're like, hi, here you go, opponent, have fun. And they're like, oh no, I don't want that. And you're like, too bad, ha 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 ha. Yeah. Being able to give your opponents one of these is pretty brutal, because if they can't deal with it again on their end step, they're losing out on a ton of value. Again, 1 card, 2 life, and a creature being sacrificed. This can be detrimental. But then also, hey, if this ever leaves play, a big downside as well. So yeah, bad gift strategies that have black in them can definitely consider a really brutal card like this. It's kind of like, was it Illusion of, I can't remember. It's like the one where you enter the battlefield, gain 20 life, you give it to an opponent. Granger. Is that the one? You gain 20 life when it enters the battlefield, you lose 20 life when it leaves the battlefield, you just give it to an opponent. It's kind of along those lines, but less brutal in the life loss, I guess, but more brutal in the other effects. Moving on. Legion Extruder, an artifact for 2 mana in red. Artifact, when it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to any target. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice an artifact, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Yeah, entering the battlefield, ping any target, 2 damage. That's a nice little shock effect. That's not too bad. Being able to make golems by paying 2 and tapping and sacrificing artifacts. Obviously, throughout the years, the most recent years, we've gotten more and more artifacts that can just be sacrificed for value, and ones that you're willing to sacrifice, because a bunch of non-token ones, like obviously previously we had like servos and, you know, Thopters, but now we have things like, oh, treasures. Yep, that's the thing. And also clues, blood tokens, lots of different kinds of artifact tokens you can sacrifice. So being able to make artifact golems out of this, that's nice. I could see this like in a really go wide with artifact token strategy in an artifact deck. Like the shock right away is nice for some little bit of value, but also just perpetual value throughout the game by sacrificing artifacts to make those 3/3 golems. You can also obviously like just, it could be a good blocker for you. Be like, okay, I have a 3/3 golem, I block with it. It's not going to take out that creature anyways. It doesn't have trample, so I'm going to pay 2 tap, sacrifice that golem, and replace it. So that can be something as well. Next up, Lost Jite. So someone lost it. We found it now. For 1 mana, when to equip 1. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put a charge counter on Lost Jite. Obviously a reference back to Umezawa's Jite. Remove a charge counter from it. Choose 1. Untap target land. Target creature can't block this turn. Put a counter on equipped creature. I mean, interesting. Definitely not as powerful as the original Jite. Could see some playing Commander and Equipment decks because, well, building up counters on this can be quite good. Obviously, and Proliferate is a thing now as well that we got a lot of support for. So getting more and more charge counter, this can be quite easy. Obviously, double strike can help with that too, or extra combats. But being able to kind of build up those counters and then, well, make it difficult for your opponents to actually figure out how to block this, because you could just dump them all onto counters onto this, or you can make it so that their creature that actually is a threat to your creature can't block it, essentially. So this could be very good for a Voltron deck. But also just, yeah, being able to untap lands can be great as well. Being like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I need like an extra boost of 2 mana this turn. Take off 2 charge counters, get that boost of 2 mana. It's an interesting card for sure. Like outside of, you know, Voltron or equipment-based strategies, I'm not sure exactly what place this has. Again, like Proliferate decks might want to consider it potentially if they could utilize those other kinds of effects. I mean, I guess in a Proliferate deck, if you've got like a lot of Proliferate, that can be quite good, because it's like every single time you Proliferate, you basically like gain a mana too, because you can untap lands with this if that's what you're really going with it. So yeah, make sure you're considering a card like this. Very interesting. Moving on, Lotus Ring. Scary. The name, just scary. Anything that says Lotus, you're like, oh, okay, here we go. Artifact equipment for 3 mana, equip 3, Indestructible. Equipped creature has +3/+3, gets +3/+3, has vigilance, and tap sacrifices creature at 3 mana of any one color. So this is interesting in that it turns your creatures into basically lotuses. You're like, okay, cool, tap sacrifice, boom, burst of mana. That being said, obviously it does take 3 mana to equip this something, so you're kind of like turning whatever mana into 3 mana of one kind by sacrificing that creature when you decide to do that. I mean, obviously it gives you a benefit first, right? You can just swing with a creature, +3/+3, swing out with that, which is nice. This is hard to deal with being indestructible. That being said, I think the kind of strategies that this really can see play in are more so like free equip. Like if you have like a bunch of equipment, like a very, very, very tuned like equipment deck, you've got like, does it Pure Steel Paladin, which makes all your equip cost 0? Or, gosh, there's that one partner commander that Alec loves that you can put equipment or auras onto something essentially for free. Yeah, this could definitely see play where it's like, hey, all right, just basically suit up a creature that you just are okay with getting rid of, like swing with it right away, sure, whatever, vigilantly if it's safe, and then tap sacrifice it for 3 mana, and just be able to kind of utilize this as a value engine for like 3 extra mana every single turn by getting rid of creature fodder with that. It's a pretty specific thing, I think. I mean, obviously just being indestructible, giving +3/+3 in vigilance is something, all right? Definitely something, and it's like a nice burst of mana when you need it, but I wouldn't say it's like for like every kind of equipment deck out there. It's definitely not for like a Voltron strategy where you're like, okay, unless you really, really care about, I guess, just +3/+3 in vigilance and this being indestructible, because if not, it's like, okay, yeah, 3 is a lot to equip, and you're not going to sacrifice your Voltron for 3 mana, most likely, the vast majority of the time. So, yeah, it's a pretty specific kind of deck that wants this, but I like the design. Next up, Memory Vessel artifact for 5 mana in red. Tap, exile it. Each player exiles the top 7 cards of their library. Until your next turn, players may play cards exiled this way, and they can't play cards from their hand. Activate as a sorcery. I mean, yeah, I mean, activate as a sorcery, I guess, makes sense with this one because you'd be like, okay, I activate right before your turn. And they're like, oh, we can't use our cards. No! And they're just exiled permanently. Yeah, giving everyone an extra 7 cards is a bit risky. Again, players may play cards they exile this way. They can't play cards from their hand. It is also like, it's an extra 7 cards, but it's like a temporary 7, right? And it's also, they can't have access to the cards in their hands. Like, this could be defensive, I guess. If you know someone's got something great in their hand, you're like, let's stop that for another turn. But also you're giving them access to other things. Obviously, this could work in a deck where you really take advantage of casting cards from outside your hand, like decks that are like, hey, like Prosper, essentially. We're like, okay, I get value out of casting things from Exile or elsewhere. So that could have a place for it. It's an interesting card because, again, you're kind of giving your opponents like temporary card advantage, but also disadvantage to the cards in their hand. Like, typically, giving someone access to 7 cards is going to be more than the number of cards in their hand, obviously, because the high end of cards in your hand, unless you have a no maximum hand size card, is 7. So you're basically giving them a new, you know, swath of options, essentially. It's an interesting card. I mean, other than, like, you know, decks that really benefit from casting things from Exile or outside their hand, I don't know where this really has a place. Moving on. Molten Duplication. Sorcery for 1 in a red. Create tokens, copy target artifact creature control, except it's an artifact, just other types. Gains haste, sacrifice by an next end step. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more of these cards in recent years. Like, Twin Flame is kind of like the one that really sticks out to me, like from, I think, Theros or whatever it was. But that's kind of like the base model of this card, and like, it was like a weird base model because it also had Strive, which doesn't usually you usually don't utilize that type of aspect on that card, but being able to make a copy of, now it's an artifact or creature, not just a creature, artifact as well, for just 2 minutes, a very powerful thing. Making that creature an artifact probably doesn't matter all that much. Maybe it does. I mean, it makes it more susceptible to removal. It's going to be sacrificed anyways at the end step, but like, if an instant speed removal for an artifact, your opponent can utilize that. That being said, like, this is like Red's way of using and abusing certain effects. Like, Blue has like, okay, I can copy a creature permanently. This one is, okay, I can copy a typically creature. I mean, artifact as well, you have the option, but I get it temporarily. That being said, just 2 mana is very, very, very valuable. I mean, utilize this for decks that want to use and abuse ETBs, or like especially populate effects. I love populate effects, but being able to copy a creature and then populate the populated token, you will get to keep forever because that does not have the sacrificing at the end step, all right? Which is nice. I mean, forever as long as it stays in play. But this one essentially, again, is a good way to use and abuse ETBs, death triggers, attack triggers as well. Again, this is sacrifice. Some of them are like exile the end step. This is sacrifice, so death triggers as well. LTBs. But yeah, you can use and abuse a lot of things with a great card like this. And again, I'm not surprised to see Red getting more of these. I think Red's going to get more of these effects throughout the years. And if your commander has a great ETB, even though, again, you're copying a legendary, oh no, I don't get to attack with it or whatnot, I have to sacrifice it right away to legend roll. yeah, it doesn't matter. You get your ETB for 2 mana. That's usually worth it. Again, that's basically a blink spell, essentially. Make sure you're considering that. Moving on. Oh, gosh. Okay, so this kind of spoils a little bit of a card that I'm talking about in a little bit and why I said oh no, but we'll get to that in a little bit with the picture. Omen Path Journey. Enchantment for 4 mana in green. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for 5 land cards that have different names. Exile them and shuffle. If you have your end step, choose a card at random, exile with it, and put on the battlefield temp. This is a very weird way to ramp, I would say. Like, when this works, it's great, obviously, right? Like, I mean, it is slower than, let's say, just an Explosive Vegetation. So Explosive Vegetation is 4 mana, sorcery, 2 basics, into play, tapped. This is go get any lands, right? Any 5 lands of different names, which that's just made for Commander, right? Essentially, because it's like, oh, hey, all your lands have different names except for basics because you're playing Commander. Anyways, hey, so go get 5 lands, whatever you want, Gaia's Cradle, whatever it is, and then put them in exile at the beginning of your end step. So at that turn, you are getting you're getting one of those lands to play, so you're ramping 1 essentially for the next 5 turns, or this turn plus the next 4. Basically, next 5. So next 4 turns plus this one. It does come into play tap, so keep that in mind. That being said, and so like after like your next turn, I guess in like 2 turns, you're kind of at the same spot you'd be with like an Explosive Vegetation, but you got to get out whatever lands you wanted. So again, like whatever that green one is that gets deserts for 5 mana. Deserts are like any lands, I guess. It counts deserts, gets zombies, Hour of Devastation, not Hour of Devastation, one of those cards essentially. Being able to tutor out any 2 basic lands, or sorry, any 2 lands in your deck typically would cost 5 or more. This lets you get 5 lands, but over basically like 5 turns. It's pretty slow. And also, here's the thing. If this gets removed, yeah, that's not good. You just pay, let's say they literally just play this and like, okay, haha, I played it, great, all right. And your opponent's like, oh, great, I remove it before you get to your end step. And then you're like, oh, okay, I just played a ramp spell for 4, got nothing out of it, lost my 5 best lands out of my deck, and I didn't ramp at all. So, yeah, I would say that for the vast majority of decks out there, unless you, like, really are built around specific lands and getting them into play, or you're built around getting lands in from exile, essentially, which there are certain commanders that care about that, or things that care about that, getting things in from exile, definitely don't consider this one then, because it is, in my opinion, just too risky. It is too risky versus just, like, any Explosive Vegetation is typically going to be better for you and help you out quicker than this does. Again, Explosive Vegetation, next turn, you've got 2 extra mana. So, if you with this one next turn, again, let's say you don't have like, if you have like a Gaia's Cradle, sure. All right, if you spent $500 on that, sure. Next turn, you will have more mana than I will with my Explosive Vegetation, most likely. But like, for the vast majority of decks out there, the lands that they run, they're mostly just tapping for 1. And so because of that, I'm going to have more mana than you next turn with my Explosive Vegetation. You will have less until another turn after that will be equal. And the turn after that, you'll be ahead of me. But again, that's if this doesn't get dealt with or stopped. So yeah, it's kind of a weird card. Like at first you're like, oh, okay, cool. Wow, so much value. 4 mana to get 5 extra mana. Wow. It takes a long time to build that over time. And then also the downside is if this is removed, you get nothing. So there you go. And also you lose your best lands. Moving on. Pest Control, a sorcery for Orzhov. Color, destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less, cycling for 2. So I like this because it doesn't say like non-token permanents, so goodbye treasures, goodbye any kind of token strategy essentially, but yeah, gets rid of soul rings as well. It really depends on your meta on if this would be a good card or not. If you've got a lot of token-based strategies like lower the ground strategies, this can be very, very, very effective. I mean, it takes out things like, Mother of Runes, takes out things like, most mana dorks that are just 1 mana, Birds of Paradise, etc. Other than that, like in Soul Ring, typically on players' curves, it's not at 1. Most cards are not at 1 in casual Commander, I should say. It does have a place. I mean, again, if your meta is very treasure-based, if your meta is very token-based, this is probably a good include in the deck. And again, if it's never technically a dead card because you can just cycle it away if you need to. I mean, like 2 for cycling. Yeah, I mean, if it was 1, that'd be even better. Obviously, 2 is not too bad, though. And obviously, if you have a cycling deck, this is a slam dunk in it. Because if you've got a Fluctuator in play, this costs 0 to cycle away, which is amazing and lovely. But also, yeah, again, having that ability to say, like, get rid of all the tokens, that is massive. So, yeah, really, really, really interesting. I guess I say all the tokens. If someone has a token copy of a land, like you're playing it's Orvar, it doesn't deal with those. So keep that in mind because it says not land. Interesting. That being said, yeah, being able to get rid of a lot of pesky things can be very, very good. Pest control. Like it. Next up, Sandstorm Scrapper, a 1/1 Human Artificer for 3 mana. Thank you, MTG Goldfish, for the translation. This is in green. When it enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 Golem Artifact Creature token. Pay 2 and tap, but if also encounter each creature you control, they gain trample till end of turn. Interesting. I mean, +1 counter strategies can definitely consider this. I guess Golem Tribal can consider it as well. Yeah, you can consider it. It's, I mean, 2 mana to tap and do that is a bit much. It does give the trample, which is nice, but get damage through. Specific decks will want it. Other than that, though, I wouldn't just say, like, hey, if you've got a counters deck, definitely an include. Like, maybe, maybe not. Next up, Simulacrum Synthesizer, an artifact for 3 mana in blue, enters the battlefield, scry 2. Whenever the artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield you control, create a 0/0 cost construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1 for each artifact you control. That's pretty good. Yeah, if you've got an artifact-based strategy that isn't like the artifact-based strategies that I have built in previous years, which have just been all like 2 mana or less artifacts, and I'm looking to reduce the cost of my artifacts and cast them all for free, and I don't play those decks anymore. Joyrest Storm. Yeah, anyways. If you have like a decent curve on an artifact deck, again, value 3 or greater is not that high, so if you have like an artifact strategy and just look at your list, you're like, okay, I've got like 40 artifacts in this deck, and like 26 of them are 26. I don't know why I said 26 versus like 25 or like a round number like 30. Most of them, I should say, are at 3 or greater. Then yeah, I mean, this is a very, very, very good card in those decks. Again, ETB Scry 2, like you wouldn't just include this in a deck just for that, right? Oh yeah, 3 mana ETB Scry 2. No, I mean, it's not bad. Card selection's nice. That being said, you need other artifacts to enter the battlefield. When you do that, oh my goodness, you can make an army that is absolutely unstoppable. A lot of, artifact construct creature tokens that get bigger and bigger and bigger as the game goes on. I mean, the more of these you play, the more artifacts you play, essentially you're getting like +2/+2 for your entire army, right? You play an artifact at 3, you're getting that plus another artifact creature, and then all of a sudden you've got, +2/+2 to all the constructs. So, yeah, this can go very, very well in the right deck. Yeah, it could be a good finisher essentially for you, like built throughout the game, but a good finisher for you. Early value too with that scrying, so very interesting. Moving on. World Waker Helm, an artifact for 3 mana in blue. If you create one or more artifact tokens, instead create one of those tokens plus additional map token. Okay. So basically kind of like Academy Manufacturer, but different obviously, being for map tokens. But it counts any artifact tokens you're making. So this one is like, hey, did you make a servo? Awesome, have a map. Did you make... I'll get to that in a second. Did you make a treasure? Hey, have a map. Map. I can see like, gosh, what is it? Dora the Explorer with map? Is it map? Is map the name of the map? I think it probably is. Things are pretty simple in that show. It's an artifact with pay 1, tap, sacrifice artifact, target creature control explores, active on sorcery. I mean, maps are interesting. Being able to let you explore can definitely be good, because again, exploring, correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, but I believe again it is from Exile on the original one. You look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, goes in your hand. It's a non-land card. Counter on the creature that is exploring, and also you can put it in your graveyard. You do not have to. So it is potential card advantage. It's also potential card selection, and also counters. So yeah, 1 mana is a decent amount of value for that. Pay 1 a blue, tap, create tokens, copy a target artifact token you control. That's a really good ability. Again, especially if you have massive artifact tokens, like things that make artifact tokens, like of creatures. That can really be really good. If not, just paying 2 mana to be like, oh, okay, cool, I have a treasure in play. Cool, I make a treasure and a map for 2 mana. That's a good amount of value. See, I can definitely see this one seeing play in token-based strategies, artifact token-based strategies. So, and ones that want to explore as well, that have artifact tokens. Moving on, Hostile Investigator, a 4/3 Ogre Rogue Detective for 3 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Whenever one of our players discard a card, 1 or more cards, investigate, triggers only once each turn. Does it really have to be once each turn? I mean, there's probably some kind of a combo you could pull off with that, but come on, Wizards. Yeah, I guess if you have a discard deck, consider this, because it's additional value, essentially. Again, 1 or more, so you're only getting investigating once. Again, 1 or more players discard 1 or more cards. That's double limiting, so you're like, okay, if I make everyone discard 3 cards, it doesn't matter, I'm still only getting 1 clue. So it's limiting on that, and also, yeah, just only once each turn. Each around the table, you could get 4 clues, right, if you're having everyone discard on each turn. So that could be valuable if you have, like, one of those enchantments in play, like, is it Bottomless Pit, essentially? This counts you as well, so keep that in mind. But, yeah, being able to make 4 clues with each group around the table is decent. I mean, not bad, if once you're set up properly. It needs setup. And the ETB is okay. I mean, like, for 4 mana, not really, but, yeah. Definitely a card to consider if you have a discard strategy. And finally, okay, the reason for my oh no on the thumbnail, loot, the key to everything. Terrifying image. Okay, I'm saying those teeth are just kind of weird. But I think the real terrifying part about this is that just like this screams to me like they want to sell plushies of this, you know? Like they're like, all right, we need an adorable creature. All right, Johnson, give me an adorable creature. Okay, yes. Let's look to other like Disney products and stuff like that. And like, okay, what's adorable? Oh wait, what? No, League of Legends. Yes, I believe actually the artist. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, but I believe the artist actually is a League of Legends artist. So this looks very League of Legends-y, and it makes sense. A 1/2 Beast Noble for a 3 mana in Teamer, Ward 1. And I guess some people are okay with a plushy Magic the Gathering thing. So that's just the direction we're going. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile a top X card to your library where X the number of card types among other non-land permanents you control. We play those cards this turn. I believe Alex said this is going in Legacy Cubes. But this is an absurd effect. It is quite absurd. Again, Wizard slaps Ward on everything. Ward 1 is not, I mean, you just pay the extra 1, right? You pay the extra 1. It is a little bit of protection, not a lot. Typically, they throw Ward 2 on everything. I'm sure they had Ward 2 on this at first, like, maybe tune it down just a little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah, that's a lot of value. This is a 3 mana commander in 3 colors. 3 pretty good colors, right? Essentially. And that gives you access to potentially, what is it again? It says non-land. So potentially 4 cards a turn. 5 cards a turn? 5 cards a turn. Artifact, enchantment, planeswalker, battle, land, creature. Goodness gracious. Okay, so non-land, right? So 5. And the other 2 would be instant sorcerers. 8 things now in because battles came in anyways. So 5 potential extra cards on each of your turns. Now, they are temporary. It is impulse draw. But if you said, hey, here's a 3 mana commander that gives you access to 5 cards each turn, you'd be like, yep, that's good. That's really good. And actually, you'd probably be like, that commander probably costs like 6 mana. No, 3. It's got Ward 1. Does it require some setup? Absolutely. Is it that hard to set up? No, not at all. In fact, very, very easy to set up and also difficult to stop once it gets going because the way I would build this is to build a bunch of protected permanents in play, ones that have, you know, certain keywords that make them very difficult to deal with, also utilizing, well, counter spells, which you obviously give yourself more access to with this, and then also utilizing, well, effects that protects all your permanents, and then things that also benefit you from playing things from outside your hand or from exile, essentially. And again, it does say play, which means that you can utilize land. So, like, you're never going to miss a land drop once you're set up with this, essentially, because you just get access again to the top 3, 4, 5 cards of your library, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, there's a land. Play it. This is very good, to the point where I'd say it's a bit pushed, a bit. And yeah, again, just the art, the art. I mean, it's really well done art, I should say, but I just don't like that direction for Magic where it's like, let's lean into like League of Legends-ish stuff and try to go in that way. It's like, let League of Legends do its own thing, okay? Let Disney do its own thing. We don't need this. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure other people are disagree with that, and it's completely fine. But yeah. Let's talk about how to use and abuse this commander, because there's some crazy things that you can do with it. I'm going to talk about these cards coming up, and all these cards are in a card list link in the description below. If you are interested in playing with loot, the key to everything, make sure you check out that list. Okay, the budget buys, cards that are less than $1. Let's start things off with a free one, Darksteel Relic, a card that is kind of useless in many decks. If you were just like, I'm going to throw that in my deck, and like, it does nothing. It's kind of the point with this one, though. Artifact for 0. Cost 0. You just play for free. You can play turn 1 if you really want to. I don't recommend that in case someone has, like, removal for it, because, yes, you could exile it or bounce it or whatnot, which I guess bouncing, it's like, okay, I'll just replay for 0. But, yeah, just play it when you need to play it. Like, you get your commander out, and you're like, okay, I play Darksteel Relic. Yay. It's indestructible. That's all it is. That's literally all it does. I mean, obviously in decks like Urza, it's like, okay, cool, it taps for a blue, too, which is amazing and awesome. That being said, with this commander, it doesn't do anything except for it just sits in play, and it's an artifact. And that's all that matters, because if this is in play and it's an artifact, that counts for 1 of your permanent types. Non-land permanent types, I should say. This is hard to deal with. It's also hard for your opponents to be like, I need to dedicate a resource to get rid of that? Do I do it? I don't know. This counts as one extra free card for you, impulse drawn off the top of your library every single one of your turns. So, yeah, a card like this, which again is useless in the vast majority of decks out there, is quite good in this kind of a deck. Next up, ones that have multiple types that are also indestructible or have another kind of protection on them, like Darksteel Mirror, are fantastic. A 0/1 mirror for 3 mana. Again, if you told me there you have a 0/1 for 3 mana, you're like, that's terrible. Oh, but it's indestructible. It's an artifact creature. So again, this counts for 2 types for your commander, artifact, and creature. So this is basically, as long as it stays in play, this is, hey, top 2 cards your library, impulse draw each turn. Each of your turns, I should say. Yeah, that's really, really, really good. So again, even though like a card like this might be kind of useless, it's actually not. Kefnet the Mindful. Again, ones that can actually be beneficial to you outside of just being, I mean, again, we talked about a 0/1 for 3 mana. This is a 5/5 flyer for 3 mana that also is indestructible. That being said, it can't attack or block unless you've got 7 or more cards in your hand, so there is that restriction. That being said, with this kind of a commander where it's like, hey, here's all these cards off the top of your library, impulse drawn each turn, you can be like, I'm just going to play those, and keep 7 cards in my hand, and then this can swing. On top of that, you can pay 3 and a blue to draw a card, return late control back to your owner's hand, so you can actually get to that 7 you want to in that way. Next up, Predator Ooze. Again, one that might start off small like this one. A 1/1 for 3 mana, not all that great. It is green, green, green. You are in 3 colors, though. You got plenty of time to fix and get this out. Indestructible. When it attacks, put a counter on it. Whenever a creature dealt damage by it this turn dies, put a counter on it. So throughout the game, this can just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It can be a threat for you throughout the game, which is lovely. And again, it's hard to deal with staying in play and just counting as your creature. So again, it's like, okay, yeah, add 1 to that count. Next up, Skyclave Relic, an artifact for 3 mana, kicker 3, indestructible, tap for 1 mana of any color. So basically at a base level, it's like, what, Darksteel Ingot, okay? Not that efficient, I should say. Again, 3 to tap for 1. It's not typically what we're looking for. That being said, this is indestructible, and Ingot, you might want to consider this as well, because we really want things that are hardy, that can stay in play for our commander. That being said, this can actually be very efficient. If you do kick it, enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, create 2 tap tokens or copies of it. So essentially, yeah, you get 3 versions of it that are all indestructible. That's a lot of things your opponents actually deal with. If they don't deal with that, you get an extra free impulse draw each turn because of this. Next up, there's actually not too many legendary enchantments out there. Lots of legendary creatures, lots of indestructible creatures, lots of indestructible artifacts, not too many indestructible enchantments. There we go, we got there. But big gods from Theros can definitely be considered. That's the God of the Sea, 5/5 legendary enchantment creature god. So again, it hits 2 of those requirements. Indestructible for 2 and a blue. So again, get it down early essentially, and also it counts for 2. So it's like impulse draw 2 for you. But also on top of that, as long as you're most on the list, the blue is 5. It is not a creature. You can get to 5. Begin for upkeep, scry 1. So like before you even impulse draw with your commander, you can scry 1, be like, I don't want that. Or like afterwards, if you want to do that too, you could do that. 1 and a blue target creature control can't be blocked this turn. It's quite nice, especially once you get a decent amount of power on the board. I mean, even this is a 5/5. Once you got your devotion to blue equal 5, it becomes a 5/5. That being said, again, just the fact that it is indestructible, it's an enchantment creature that is going to count for 2 things. Obviously, it has to actually have your devotion to make it a creature, but still, you can get it up there again, being able to get a lot of things to play that are hard to deal with, so keep that in mind. Next up, battles. Again, battles are another permanent type. Just literally adding a new permanent type last year made this, was this last year or 2 years ago? I think it was last year. Made this new card much better because, again, instead of being Impulse Draw 4, which is already amazing, the high end is Impulse Draw 5, which is just absurd. Invasion of Segovia, a battle siege for 3 mana. Enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue, crack creature tokens to trample. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You are getting 2 things out of 1. So again, actually, you can even consider things that are like, okay, make tokens of this or that. Or like, you know, a creature that enters the battlefield makes you a artifact token or whatever, like a treasure, whatever. Cool. You can consider that because it's like 2 things. Again, our commander does not specify non-token. It does not say that. So this counts as a battle and also a creature token. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. So yeah, it would count for 2. Obviously, those tokens are not protected. Battle's kind of not protected either, but like, it's difficult for your opponent just to like dedicate a resource just to deal with this when it's not doing anything. Like, and you're going to be incentivized like not to attack it when it's defeated. So as it enters the battlefield, choose a button to protect it. You and others can attack it. When it's defeated, exile it, you cast Transformed. I guess your opponents might be incentivized to actually attack it to like take it from being a battle potentially. you're not heavily incentivized to do that because you're like, I just would like that to stay in play. That being said, if this does flip, you should get a benefit out of it. A 3/3 Ledger Creeper Serpent, non-creature spells you control, non-creature spells you cast have Convoke, get your end step untapped for creatures. So you still get a giant value out of this flipping. So kind of put your opponents into an awkward position where like, do I want to take out that battle or not? I don't know. Because again, you just kind of want it to stay in play so you get an extra impulse draw with this. Speaking of battles, Invasion of Zendikar, just a very solid, good one. We already talked about earlier, Explosive Vegetation. This is basically Explosive Vegetation. They keep making better Explosive Vegetations, essentially. Battle Siege for 4 mana in green. Enters the battlefield, search life for 2 base land cards, battlefield tap, then shuffle. Exact same thing, Explosive Vegetation, basically, but as a battle. If you do deal with it, which again, I don't recommend, unless you have another battle in play, I'd rather just keep it as a battle in play to add to my permanent count. If you do deal with it, though, it turns over into a 4/4 Hasty Vigilant Elemental that can tap for 1 mana of any colors and is a land of other types. So, yes, this, I guess, would count for a creature, but you're already probably going to have that with other things. Comes to Planeswalkers, there's not too many Planeswalkers that are actually all that protected. Like, there aren't ones that, at least in these colors, like Gideon's are the ones that are like, I'm indestructible and stuff. Cool, good for me. But yes, there aren't typically Planeswalkers that really protect themselves that well. Outside of being like, I bounce that, or I tap those things down, or like I put creatures in front of me, which you already have ways to protect it. Like if you have indestructible creatures that can block, it's great. So again, playing kind of like more Hello 40 like defensive strategy with this is probably good, like protecting your things, getting things out that are hardy, it can block, but also a Planeswalker like this one where you can kick it, enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, you get a token copy of it, except it's not legendary, its starting loyalty is 1, so being able to get extra copies of this in play means that it's more likely that you can keep at least one of them in play, so that you can say, oh, okay, cool, that counts as a permanent type toward my commander, extra impulse draw. Also, +1 scry 2, that's nice. Being able to set up your next draws, essentially, your next impulse draws. 0, draw a card, reveal it, remove a number of loyalty counters from it equals mana cost. If you want to do that, sure. Basically, though, the key to this deck is just literally keeping things in play, making things that are hardy to keep them in play. You can also utilize cards like Faldorm, Dread, Wolf, Herald, and gain value from playing things from Exile. Gaining value from playing things from anywhere outside your hand, essentially, is what you want to utilize. 3/3 Human Druid for 3 mana in Golgari. Gruul! Whenever you cast a spell from Exile, your lane enters battlefield under control from Exile, make a 2/2 Wolf. And also pay 1, tap, discard a card, exit top card your library, play it this turn. So making an army out of this is quite nice. Again, you're going to be impulse drawing a ton, casting a ton of things from Exile, playing things from Exile too, like lands, and also giving you extra impulse draw too with this is quite nice too. Moving on, the Lost and the Damned to chimp for 3 mana. Whenever a land enters battlefield control from anywhere other than your hand, or you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a 3/3 red spawn creature token. Keep in mind, again, anywhere other than your hand counts your library, so like ramping, which you're in green, obviously, will get you 3/3s. Also, again, casting spells from anywhere, or like playing lands, from your impulse draw too, is going to help you get extra 3/3s. So, yeah. On top of that, I will say that, like, although there aren't many enchantments out there that are, like, protected, really, like, there are, I guess there's one out there that's, I think, hexproof, right? That one that's, like, if you get, like, 4 of these in different places, you win. That one technically is probably hard to deal with as well. That one you won't really use, like, the win condition because it's, like, it's singleton format. That being said, like, enchantments are just typically the hardiest permanent to deal with when it comes to this, because like Planeswalkers can be attacked, battles can be attacked, and also, yeah, that kind of stuff. Creatures, Wrath of God. Wraths are the most commonly dealing with creatures. Artifacts, there's more artifact hate out there typically in games like Vandal Blast. Typically you don't see like just a spell dedicated to just like destroy all enchantments. Like you have other spells like, Steer Command that can destroy all enchantments, but typically the number of those spells is few and far between. So enchantments, even just having this in play, it's probably going to stay in play for quite a while. Next up, Sage of the Beyond, a 5/5 Flying Spirit Giant for 7 mana, but you can foretell it for just 5 mana. Spells you cast from anywhere in your hand cost 2 less to cast. This is huge. This is a massive card. I think Doc Arlock is another one, right, that you could definitely consider the brand new, like, bear dude. Yes, but being able to cast spells from outside your hand for 2 less, that's massive because, again, the massive amount of value you're going to be getting for your commander is all impulse draw off the top of your library. Casting those spells from outside your hand for 2 less, this is huge. This is basically like all your spells essentially cost 2 less. So that is massive. It's in Kali Hunter. Interesting one. First up, you can adventure it. Exile target creature card from your graveyard until end of your turn. Next turn, you may cast the card, so that's nice. Additional value. 7/7 Trampler, though. Scorpion Scout for 7 mana. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a creature spell you cast from Exile. So being able to be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, impulse draw 5. Oh, a giant creature from Exile. Let's cast that for free. Sweet. Yeah, so you can get a lot of value out of this. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. Next up, the pricier picks. Again, cards outside of my budget, but might be within yours. More than $1. Paradox Haze. Yeah, that's a cool card. Aura for 3-mana enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted players, first upkeep each turn the player gets additional upkeep step after this step. Our commander has an upkeep trigger. Let's double that up. There's other ways to double it up too, like, you know, copy target, triggered ability, those kinds of things too. Was Wandering Throne? Roaming Throne? I always say the name wrong, but yeah, that too. Ways to double up on a trigger. That's huge. And ways to actually get an extra upkeep, huge for this commander. Impulse draw, even more. Now be careful that you don't like mill yourself, because I don't believe, and correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, I'm not looking at the card right now, but I don't believe it's like, put those cards at the bottom of your library that you didn't use. No, they're gone forever. So you could technically just get rid of your entire deck if you go too hard into all the doubling and, you know, extra triggers. That being said, yeah, a lot of extra value to be had just for 3 mana. Basically, get your commander's ability twice. So that's huge. So again, instead of Impulse Draw 5, it can be Impulse Draw 10. Gross. Luckily, or maybe unluckily for the players who really want to build around this, Obeka is not in these colors, the new Obeka. That being said, Sphinx the Second Sun is a 6/6 flying Sphinx for 8 mana. Beginning of your post-combat, I don't say pre-combat, post-combat main phase is from beginning phase after this phase, so that means you get an extra untap, upkeep, and draw. It's a lot of extra value, just untapping again, drawing again, and yes, getting your commander's trigger again, or any other upkeep triggers as well. It's a lot of mana, but again, you're going to have a lot of resources with a commander like this. Next up, Passionate Archaeologist. Yeah, cards that benefit you again or hurt opponents whenever you're doing things from outside your hand. This is great. Background, commander creatures you don't have. Whenever you cast a spell from Exile, this creature deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to each target opponent. Again, when you're casting any of those cards from your just glut of cards that you're going to have from Impulse Draw, ping your opponents. Yeah, that's quite nice and quite deadly. Wild Magic Sorcerer, quite random, quite deadly. 4/3 Orc Shaman for 4 mana. The first spell you cast from Exile each turn has Cascade. So again, reveal at the top, you hit something smaller, play it for free. Yeah, that's really good. Because, again, you're going to be getting a lot of value from that Impulse Draw, and now you're getting even more free value just by casting spells, which you're already going to be doing for the Impulse Draw, and you're like, okay, cool, free value. Basically, hey, if it's good in Prosper, it's probably good in this one if it can fit in the deck, and, you know, I guess if it's in red. Next up, Nullfish Knee, a 4/6 beast demon with flying that costs 6 mana. Whenever you cast a spell from Exile, copy it, choose targets for the copy. If it's a permanent spell, the copy gains haste, and at the beginning of the next end step, beginning of the end step, sacrifice that permanent. Being able to copy, again, non-permanents, just in sorceries, and just get an extra copy of it is amazing. Getting a temporary copy is very nice as well of permanents, too. A lot of extra value can be had from something like this. Heroic Intervention. Any of these kind of, like, let's protect our entire board spells are huge for this kind of a deck because, yeah, there are still ways to deal with your board, right? Yes, Indestructible is amazing and can deal with a lot of things, or can stop a lot of things from dealing with it, but there's going to be times your opponent's like, okay, I'm going to exile that, and you're like, get my things hexproof. Yeah, permanents you control gain Hexproof Indestructible. So the things that weren't indestructible now they are. And again, Hexproof, yeah, reduce 2 mana. That's amazing. Protect your entire board. Keep your position there and say, I'm going to keep with the extra value. Thank you. My value engine shall not be touched. Teferi's Protection is obviously one that can, like, really help you out in that. Mithril Coat. Flash Indestructible. Equipment for 3 mana. Equip creatures Indestructible. Enters the battlefield. Attach to ledger creature control. That's really, really good in this deck. Attach to your commander. Protect your commander. Again, your commander can definitely be a target because of the amount of value that it can get you. Protect your commander with this. Give it Indestructible. Also, this has Indestructible, and the enchant creature's Indestructible, so yeah, this can be quite good. Being able to stay and play again, it counts that an artifact that is going to be hard to deal with. Next up, now the Keen-Eyed. It's Indestructible again. Enchantment Creature God. This is only a creature, though, if your devotion to green is 5 or greater, which is not all that hard to get to. Again, this plus your commander is already at 2. You can get there, all right? Creature spells you cast cost 1 to cast. This is great cost reduction. Again, if you... Depends on what direction you go with this deck. If you go for, like, a balance of all the things, it's kind of hard to balance, like, the number of battles because there's only so many. But you go for, like, a balance of the number of permanents just so that you're like, okay, I make sure I get to, like, these different amounts. Cool. But if you're, like, a little more heavy into creatures, or even if you're not, if you have a decent amount of creatures in the deck, reducing that cost, again, off that impulse draw can help you cast more and more of those spells. On top of that, pay 2 and a green, reveal the top card of life. It's a creature card. Put in your hand, otherwise put in your graveyard. Yeah, I mean, if you got some Scry effects as well, that can really help you kind of know when that's going to happen, or if you just have extra mana lying around, sure, utilize it. The One Ring. Yeah, it's a really good card in a lot of decks. Who knew? Legendary artifact for 4. Indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. Beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on it. Tap a burden counter on it, then draw a card for each burden counter on it. Pretty self-explanatory why this one's very good. I mean, first of all, this is just Indestructible artifact, so being that is very good for this kind of a deck because you want to keep permanents in play. That being said, you gain protection from everything until next turn is really, really, really good. Very, very, very good. On top of that, this is a amazing card draw engine for you. So again, if you're already not getting enough value out of your commander, you're getting value out of this too. And of course, you got ways to bounce back to your hand. You can reset it, that kind of things as well. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on these new cards from, I think it's called the Big Score. Again, it's like basically like the Aftermath set that is not an Aftermath set because people got upset about Aftermath and said it was one of the worst things of all time. And the Wizards like, oh, but we already planned another one of those. It's part of the set, but it's not. Yeah, let me know your thoughts are on all that. Let me know what your thoughts are on loot. And yeah, just, I don't know, just like the League of Legends-esque kind of looking things. Nah, that can stay in League of Legends. And like Disney looking kind of like, hey, let's sell plushies of this. I swear, if there's a plushie of this, goodness gracious. Wizards can only fall so far, right? Right? Regardless, it's a very, very, very powerful commander. Very powerful commander. One that can generate a ton of value, and one that, again, has a little bit of protection to that ward, but if you're playing with it, you want some more ways to protect it, because it's going to be just a lightning rod for some removal because of the amount of value that can give you. Again, like 5 impulse draw each turn. Yeah, gross. So, yeah, interesting. If you're interested in that commander, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. Stay tuned to the channel for more exciting quick tips and spoilers. And, of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.